All right, welcome back. Today I am working on a 2004 Mercury Mountaineer Premier. This vehicle came into my lot. I think the owner got arrested or something, and they never came to pick up their car. Not surprised. By the time they get out, the bill is really high. I'm not sure the exact details, but it's been sitting for over a year here. I'm gonna get to sell on this thing, but it needed some work. So cleaned it up and everything, and then the battery died. Okay, great. So when the battery died, the windows wouldn't move. Of course, that makes sense. So throw a new battery in, windows still wouldn't move. What's going wrong here? Well, I checked all the fuses. The fuses are fine. There is, I'm sure this works for Explorers of the same year range as this Mountaineer, but there is a 60 amp fuse that does the windows, the audio, and the sunroof under the hood. And then there's a 30 amp breaker that just does the windows under the hood. Those are both fine. And then there is a 15 amp fuse in position 17 under the dash, right under there, way under there. That was fine as well. And I started scratching my head like, that's weird. So I took the door, the switch off, off without the panel coming off, and I started testing the wires. None of the output wires from the switch went to ground when I threw the switch. I had confirmed there was power to it, but nothing went to ground when I threw the switch. Okay, that's kind of weird. So then I figured out what the ground wire was. It's black, hint, hint. And I made sure that that was connected to ground. Well, it was not connected to ground. There was no continuity to ground from the actual switch. That's the problem. The motors aren't run by power being sent to the motor. They're run by a ground connection being completed to the motor. That's how the motors are run. So why did it go bad when the battery went low on voltage and died? Well, right there is where your wires go through. Now that gets, it's a common thing on many vehicles that wires do go bad as they move, and the driver's door is the most common place for it to happen because that's where the door, that's the door that moves the most often. So, but why did it go bad at the same time as the battery dying? Well, so, there's a relationship between volts and amps and resistance. Now, resistance is about the same in the circuit no matter what your volts are. But when your volts drop, your amps have to go up to be able to do the kind of work that the motor wants to do. So when the battery voltage dropped to like, what was it, like maybe 4 or 5 volts by the time everything just stopped working, who knows, the amperages had to basically double from where they were. If it's supposed to be at 12 point whatever volts, but it's down to 6, well, your amps have to double to make up for the fact that your volts are low. So this is important to understand because the wires break by being moved back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now, they're supposed to be flexible, but over time, this individual strands inside the wire happen to just break, and you have a poor connection, sometimes an intermittent connection. Now, when those strands are really, really small, they're not able to handle the amperage that is supposed to be put through them. Mine weren't that bad yet, but once the voltage got so low that the amperage had to get so high to run the motor, then that wire basically fried inside of that boot right there. So what did I do? Well, a bit of a pain, but I fished a wire through that boot. It's this, I got a 10 gauge wire right here. I poked a hole through that wire. I know, you guys can hate on it. I didn't solder it, but I zip tied it, I taped it, and then I'm gonna connect that wire up to the, there's a bolt right there, about point to it right there, and then this wire is gonna go on it, and I'm gonna hook it up. So that's what's gonna happen. And I've already tested, the windows do work when I jumped from the ground here to the cigarette lighter ground. So I knew, in fact, that if I corrected this wire through the boot, the windows would then work. So that's how I verified my hunch. But anyway, this is just an odd thing. You wouldn't have thought that a wire would fry when your battery goes low, but it does happen. So just think outside the box, scratch your head. And I had to call a buddy of mine to help walk me through my logic here. So it's good to have friends that know things, but maybe I can be your friend on YouTube.